In this video, we'll give you the sneaky starters for week 1. I'm Jim Coventry with Anthony Cervino of RotoWire, and let's start out with the quarterback position, Jared Goff. Jared Goff will be playing Sunday Night Football at home against the Rams. Now, we know Jared Goff is always excellent at home. If you drafted Goff, you probably drafted him outside the top 12 quarterbacks, so you looked at him as a rotational player, spot starter. Not this week. You're starting him. The Rams lost Aaron Donald to retirement, and that means all the other defenders that looked kind of good last year, well, Aaron Donald's not there to draw a triple team. So those defenders might be good, but maybe not. Middle linebacker Ernest Jones gets traded away. Great linebacker, great blitzer, gone. Don't forget, defensive coordinator Raheem no longer with the team. This is a very attackable defense. The Lions retain the main pieces of their offensive line. Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator's back. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, maybe a little Jameson Williams. Look for a shootout. Go with Jared Goff in your starting lineup. Anthony, who do you got at quarterback?
Jim, my quarterback is Kirk Cousins, and we know Kirk Cousins all off season long is one of the best values at the position in fantasy football. Now, some people who drafted Kirk Cousins may be a little bit skittish putting him in the starting lineups this week. They get a tough matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I do think this is a matchup that Kirk Cousins can exploit. While he is coming off the injury, Kirk Cousins has a slew of weapons to work with and almost comparable weapons to what he had in Minnesota. When you look at guys like Drake London, Kyle Pitts, who was a little bit banged up, and I do need to put that there. Darnell Mooney, and of course, Bijan Robinson. And the big thing here is Bijan Robinson. I expect the Atlanta Falcons to try to establish the run and get Bijan involved early. And if that happens, there's going to be open passing lanes for Kirk Cousins. I view Kirk Cousins as a high-end quarterback, too, with some QB1 upside in the season opener.
That sounds like a great one. Let's move the running back. Look, this one is not a guarantee, but it's worth looking at. Antonio Gibson of the New England Patriots. I know Ramondre Stevenson is the lead running back in that backfield. Again, we don't know fully what Gibson's role is. There's not much on that depth chart after Stevenson. So that said, the Bengals are playing the Patriots. Bengals are 8.5-point favorites, one of the biggest lines of the week. So Vegas is telling us that the Patriots are probably playing from behind in the second half of this road game. If that's the case, Antonio Gibson would likely be used as the hurry-up back. And if he's in that scenario, don't be surprised to see Gibson catch 5 passes. The Cincinnati linebackers are below average in coverage, and Antonio Gibson may be a lot of things. One we know for sure, though. He is an excellent receiver, and he can definitely do some damage after the catch. And if there are some run plays involved here, the Bengals defense was terrible last year, and they lost their best run defender, DJ Reader, in the offseason. If Gibson gets a draw play or two, he could get big yardage on those as well. Again, it's risky, but if you really need him, Gibson's worth a shot.
Jim, my running back is Jerome Ford, and this is a player that without Nick Chubb for the next few weeks at a minimum, he should be in your starting lineups. Now, we drafted Ford at a value because most of the offseason, there was some uncertainty about whether or not Nick Chubb was going to be back in time for week 1. We know that's out of the question. And this is also a backfield. They have Pierre Strong. They brought back Donta Foreman. But let's face it, Jerome Ford will be the lead running back for the Cleveland Browns in week 1. Now, he gets a Cowboys defense that last season, they were middle of the pack against enemy running backs, and Ford could do a little bit of everything. He's a good in-between the tackles runner. He could also catch passes out of the backfield, and Dallas's defensive strength is rushing the passer. They're not going to let Deshaun Watson get comfortable, and I think they're going to want to slow the pace down, the pace of the game down, which means we should see a lot of Jerome Ford. If Jerome Ford gets into the end zone, I think he could be a top 15 running back in week 1.
If you enjoy videos like this, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe to the RotoWire Fantasy Football channel on YouTube. Also, you can check out all of our fantasy football content and rankings. Get a free 2-day trial, no credit card needed. Just head on over to rotowire.com/Jim. You can check out all of our content. All right, wide receiver. Anthony, I'm going with Wan'Dale Robinson here. The Giants may not have much success on the ground against the Minnesota Vikings. We know one thing about the Vikings, though. They are going to blitz the house. Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator, that's the way he's going to do things. Now, the blitz will be coming. Also, Stephon Gilmore and Shaq Griffin have been added to the Vikings cornerback room, and they may not be world beaters, but they got to cover for about 2 seconds if the blitz gets sent. And what'll happen is you'll see those corners press a little bit. Daniel Jones may be shy to throw that ball to Malik Neighbors because of the outside throw, a bad look, the blitz. Well, the middle of the field is going to be a really nice place to go. You'll have a lesser corner. Wan'Dale Robinson really broke out after the week 13 bye last year. We should see him as a safety valve, see him on some in breakers. Don't forget, Robinson was a second-round pick 2 years ago. And again, like I said, he looked great after the bye last year. He's a perfect weapon against the blitz and zone defenses. So feel free if you need him to go with Wan'Dale Robinson. Anthony, who do you like at receiver?
Jim, I love Khalil Shakir at wide receiver. Now, the Buffalo Bills play the Arizona Cardinals. This game has a 48.5-point total, one of the highest in the week 1 slate. That means Vegas believes points are going to be scored. And on both sides, we know the Cardinals defense is going to be bad. But on the other side, Buffalo's defense is going to take a massive step back. A lot of players lost. They already lost Matt Milano. And we know the Cardinals, they have a deceptively good offense. There should be fireworks. And I do think there is a world where the Cardinals potentially jump out to a lead, which means Josh Allen and company, they're going to have to throw the football. And Khalil Shakir should be the #1 target at the wide receiver position. I get that they brought in Keon Coleman, guys like Curtis Samuel, Mac Hollins, but Khalil Shakir is the only returning wide receiver from last season. And outside of Dalton Kincaid, we know Khalil Shakir has an existing rapport with Josh Allen. And I think that's going to be on display early and often in the season opener.
At tight end, I'm looking at Pat Freiermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Freiermuth was commonly drafted outside the top 12 receivers, maybe got pushed up in some leagues, but right around that borderline. Well, Pat Freiermuth will be facing the Atlanta Falcons. That's the team that new offensive coordinator Arthur Smith coached for last year. Now, Arthur Smith, again, running at Steelers offense, very familiar with the personnel that Atlanta has on defense. I think there's an inherent advantage there. We're going to see Arthur Smith, the coach, run multiple tight ends and 2 or fewer receivers on most offensive plays. So what does that mean? Freiermuth is probably going to be the #2 passing option in the offense, while Darnell Washington and Michael Pruitt used as blockers frequently. Now, the Atlanta linebackers, slightly below average in coverage. This is a good matchup for Freiermuth. Now, we know free safety Jesse Bates is a stud in coverage, but normally he plays center field, and that's probably not where Freiermuth is running his routes. So that said, we'll see Freiermuth used very creatively. He should get 6 or more targets in this game, and I love him as a sneaky start at tight end. Anthony, who do you got at tight end?
Now, I have a really sneaky start. He was going undrafted in some leagues, but I absolutely love Mike Gesicki in week 1. Now, we know Mike Gesicki, he opens up his new year with a new team in a revenge game against the New England Patriots. And let's face it, Gesicki's time in New England was a time to forget. Now, one of the big reasons why I like Mike Gesicki, we are sitting in the middle of the week. There's no signs of Jamar Chase right now signing a contract. We don't know if he's going to play this week. This holdout can linger. And I think Mike Gesicki could benefit. Obviously, this is a Cincinnati team. They have guys like T. Higgins, Andrei Iosivas, Jermaine Burton. But if we paid attention all offseason long, Mike Gesicki was working with Joe Burrow. They could potentially line him up a lot in the big slot role. And we know Cincinnati, with that backfield, that new look backfield, they're going to have to throw the football. I can see a big game out of Mike Gesicki in week 1.
Hey, I'm going to stick with the same team. We're going to make our wild card picks here. We'll player from a different position. Somebody else, a bonus play, we'll say. And I'm going to go with Andrei Iosivas of the Cincinnati Bengals. And now, Iosivas had an incredible training camp for the Bengals. And even though the team did draft Jermaine Burton in the 3rd round, Iosivas seemed to soundly beat Burton for that job in August as a 3rd receiver. And don't forget, the Bengals ran 76% 3-receiver sets last year. They spread those receivers out. And Jamar Chase, look, as of this recording, Jamar Chase may not be on the field. Now, maybe that changes by kickoff, but even that said, can Chase really be a full participant on the field? Probably unlikely. That said, even if Chase is there, Iosivas is in great shape. And don't be surprised if Chase does somehow figure out his thing and play that he's a decoy. So Yoshibas will see the lightest coverage among the Cincy receivers. Now, New England may appear to have a good defense, but don't forget, Bill Belichick is gone. And I believe that was a straw that stirred the drink there and put everybody in the right spot at the right time. Don't forget, Yoshibas has excellent size, speed, agility, and explosiveness. Defense are unlikely to account for him. So again, if you are stuck at receiver, load up Andrei Yoshibas. Anthony, who's your wild card?
My wild card player is J.K. Dobbins of the Los Angeles Chargers. And the Vegas total of this game, 40.5, one of the lowest on the slate. That tells me this is going to be a slower paced ground and pound game. And I see not only Zamir White seeing a ton of work, but I'm also going to favor J.K. Dobbins over Gus Edwards. Now, J.K. Dobbins, we know a lot of bad injury luck, but he also knows the system as he played with Greg Roman for a few years in Baltimore. J.K. Dobbins, I also believe, is a more complete runner than Gus Edwards. Now, the matchup against the Raiders, we can't really go by last season because they could have improved this defense, but the Raiders, they were a top 12 team in fantasy points allowed to the running back position. I'm going with J.K. Dobbins. It's a dart throw, but in a game where I can see the running backs being extremely busy on both sides, it would not shock me at all if J.K. Dobbins emerges as one of the better fantasy backs this week. And then all of a sudden, if he's not on rosters in your league, he might be one of the top waiver wire pickups going into week 2.
Those are your sneaky starts for week 1. Good luck in your fantasy football contest. We'll be back next week with more sneaky starts for week 2.